Sorry.
I don't think so.
Okay. And
For folks just tuning in, we started pressing the record button just a few minutes late, so we're in the midst of the director's report from Director Spansky.
and you might hit OK and get rid of that notification on the
Yes.
screen. I believe that the slides have also been posted, so we could probably circulate after this meeting. We have access to both of those slide decks and the link to watch if you're interested. Over on the right, big things that are happening sort of match the topics on the left. After tomorrow, the next big budget milestone that's fixed on the calendar is April 20 plus or minus, which is when the mayor's proposed budget is going to come out. That's when it is transmitted from the executive to the legislative branch for consideration, deliberation, potential amendment and approval. Between now and then, there will be community listening sessions. Those are being put together primarily, I think, by our budget office in coordination with council offices. So I don't have a lot of insight into that, except one or more of them might be at a community center, which I think would be such a great way to showcase the value of those buildings and get people in them and seeing what they're like and how they operate. Those will happen, I think, both before and after the proposed, although as you can see, I don't have a lot of information about dates and particulars. Next, the core services realignment projects are significant for our service area and potentially for our team. The charge for them was to reduce cost by 20% across each of the functions independently. That translates to up to as many as 94 full-time equivalent positions in the public works service area that would be maybe laid off or maybe reclassified into a different type of position, up, down, or otherwise. I'm not sure what type of reclass it would be, but they would not be the same.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
94 out of what? Do you know what the total is?
Denominator. I know it's not 500 because public works is so big. The vast majority of the 20% would come in that scenario from within it. It may be in the slides, but I don't know offhand.
94 looks big, but if it's compared to 10,000 is small, 200.
It's more like that.
Feel.
It's
Okay.
more like that.
Thank you.
And if I have that information point, I will share it.
That's okay. I just wanted a little bit of context.
Well, you've made me curious. And then the last thing I have here is about something I previewed last time, which is just a small thing, but the good news, which is we had a really nice short introductory conversation I did with our DCA with our new city administrator, Raymond Lee, near the end of February. It was a good, short, but very mighty and content-rich conversation about the big picture of the Parks Bureau. What's going on? Where are we? I don't know what's the path that we're on? What are we challenged with? What are we focused on? What do you need to know in your roles? That was time really well spent. He was super engaged, had good questions. And we have tentatively, at least, a series of 3 monthly check-ins to help him get kind of in the swim and up to speed with things that are going on. That won't be a forever cadence, but we're, I think, going to do that for the next few months. I find that very encouraging, and that's really valuable time. So I'm looking forward to that. No agendas yet. We'll just see what's hot 2 days before the meeting.
Yeah, so for tomorrow's work session, do we have links if people want to type in?
It's not a format where there is testimony, but you can watch.
Right.
So yes, we will share a link to watch and to the materials.
Matt?
Thanks for the presentation. So 2 questions. One, it sounds like a decision has not been made on what cuts to make to capital improvements. Okay. And then I'm curious on the Jade District Park opportunity. Has any consideration been given to potentially a swap? Is there any excess parkland that isn't useful?
That Metro
Yeah,
would take from us. I think it mostly goes the other way. That has not been suggested to me, so I don't think there's an obvious deal to be made, and it would not solve for the financial piece, which is really the limiter. for us, but I take
In
your.
terms of in terms of programming it, maintaining it,
Building it.
does it seem like there's a will amongst, because I know the community is very strongly interested in.
It's a really
administration and
attractive
not.
site. Our system planners say it's a great location.
Can you
Be a great
state the
addition.
location?
90th and Lauren, between Division and Powell.
At
Seems like-
82nd.
Excuse me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Not
west
on-
of 82nd.
Just west of 82nd.
East of A-second.
So what do you think their opportunities are to sort of creatively encourage public officials to think about a way forward?
Challenge is financial. So on one hand, I'm not sure. Nothing's obvious to me, but on the other hand, sky's the limit because it's just money.
Public entities spending public dollars, right?
Yeah.
Buckets for reasons, but
I'm not
they're
sure.
public dollars too.
The greater part of the financial picture is the acquisition and the development. But actually, the harder part is the forever maintenance. So those are probably different solution sets. It's a hard one.
Adrian?
So following up on the Jade question, is that an opportunity for a private partnership in some way? That's been an area of interest and, I guess it might not be sort of a top area for that, but they're potentially a surprise partner. I agree with that. And then my second question is, so of the 94 FTE that are projected to be reduced, is Parks taking the same kind of percentage hit that, or are they somewhat shielded by the levy and?
I want to be careful because I want to
Yeah.
be accurate and as
Sure,
precise
sure,
as
sure.
possible. Let me look in the
Yeah.
materials.
Yeah.
I don't know that we know that, and so it may be specified there, it may not be.
Right.
Yeah, and I should be more clear. I'm talking specifically about human resources, technology services, procurement, engagement, equity. And these changes would be effective July 1 with the kind of functional redesign to follow. But with a good understanding of which things in HR, for example, would be housed and done centrally, which things would be housed and led and done by people embedded in bureaus. So there's like architecture, but details to follow.
We had a question
Big
from
deal.
Bill.
Hi. I'm curious, is if Parks can't acquire the land, does Metro have any interest in, I know Metro runs their own parks. Would they have any interest in pursuing it on their end?
Sounds like not, but that's a good question. They're more interested in proper natural areas farther out.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
And they're not interested in, I don't know how big the property is, affordable housing with a community garden space or with some park access to make it a combined use property.
Yeah.
That I don't know. Would not necessarily solve the problem of resources, but would be a way to do both policy goals. It's 1.4 acres, I think.
Not huge.
Yes. No.
Any other questions for Director Schmansky?
Lauren, did you have something to say?
Sure. As Sonia mentioned, it's we have talked to Metro extensively about them. They own it now and they bought it for housing. So that's how they started. So it will be housing if it doesn't become a park, affordable housing. It's 1.3 acres. It's at 2815 Southeast 90th Place. And so that's like, as Sonia said, Division to the north, Powell to the south, 82nd and I-205. That's the area it's in.
Right across from Vaughn, kind of.
I'm sorry?
I was saying it's right across, I have the maps open, it's
Yeah.
right across from Vaughn.
Behind.
Yeah, and it's not very far actually from either Harrison, Ed Benedict, or Lentz Park, but there are some major roads in there that make it a little bit more difficult to get there. So that's the story on that. We're hoping they will take it on. That would be great.
All right. Yes, one.
Are there more reports?
Okay.
In the director's report from February, that's in our packet. There was one part mentioning, bronze and brass installation, art, benches were stolen. Currently working with, Metro on a project that also has a lot of bronze arts. What is, I understand that the remaining brass benches will be de-installed, and I don't know how many art pieces already taken away. What is Park's position as something like that happens, and of course it costs money to replace, but taking all of this away also seems to be a detriment to the community who frequent to parks. I just want to know, yes, there were thefts, then what?
Lauren would know better.
She has her
She
hand
knows
up.
the situation better, and you would know any like historical precedent or practice when something like this happens. I don't.
Yeah, so it is unfortunate. They stole the benches at McCoy, which were art pieces actually. So it's actually owned and to be maintained by RAC. And so they have removed some additional benches too, to try and figure out how to make them more secure in the ground. And they also stole bronze turtles at
Upper Lodge,
Arbor Lodge. Thank you. So again, owned by RAC in theory, purchased by them and to be maintained by them. So TBD on what we're going to do about that.
Thank you. Harden them up if the back.
we are about to put the elk statue back.
Strapped down. April, yeah, right?
Michelle,
It
you
will
put
come.
their.
The week of April 6th.
Oh, no, I think I had other staff who were gonna speak to
A few, yes, and then I was gonna say one more thing. There's no, I'll stop the share so we can see everyone, but there's no press release on it yet. It will be soon, probably this week. But the naming ceremony for the park formerly known as A Park is scheduled for March 28th. It'll be very exciting. The name is Ishit Winu. I will put it in the chat as to how it's spelled, but it basically means Path of the Huckleberries. Which is really great. And so we'll send a flyer to folks. You can attend, if you so choose. And if you do attend, please let Jenna know, who will soon be taking on after me just a bit, if you're attending, so we can make sure that you get a checkpoint with staff and get to talk with folks.
I could most likely do it, but I'll follow up because I live nearby.
Wonderful. Okay, with Sonia's report being done, we have both Amanda and Jenna here to kind of give a quick update on advisory bodies.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. Amanda Manhattan, she, her pronouns. As we talked about in the last board meeting, there was some confusion about the role that the Parks Board played in its relationship to council in this new form of government, categorized in a report from the city's Advisory Bodies Enhancement Project. Again, as a reminder, that project is focused on ensuring all of our advisory bodies are in compliance with our laws, but also aligned and consistent in our new structure. So we reached out to the city attorney's office and to the Office of Civic Life, which is leading the project, for clarity on the question of, one, whether Parks Board is advising council or is solely advising the Parks Director, because each of those comes with its own parameters. And according to the city attorney's office, it seems that Parks Board is an advisory body that is set up to advise council. However, that comes with an additional set of requirements that will need to be incorporated moving forward to make sure that there's legal congruence with that. So some of the things that come with that is a requirement for a more formalized work plan, some changes to the bylaws, but those need to be identified by city council. And so Jenna has done a great job of reaching out to the citywide advisory project folks to get more clarity about what's going to be provided in template, what they want to be consistent across the boards, and where we'll have to do a little bit more finessing and thinking about some of the nuances related to Parks Board. And just wanted to elevate too, that we discovered through the process that this issue did come up when all of the transition was happening, but it got lost a little bit in some of the staff transition. So we were able to pull those threads together, and I'll hand it to Jenna to share a little bit about what she learned from the Office of Civic Life. But on that question, yes, this body is set up to advise council, and yes, that will require some changes.
Great. The main change that we'll see is the city code has been updated from informing commission to informing council. The Advisory Enhancement Project produced a final report, which I found to be really helpful in getting a full picture of any changes or updates that need to be made. I'm still waiting to hear back from Ocean, but we are confirmed with them that they will be coming to present to different advisory bodies to provide an overview of the requirements that are needed for reporting, any templates that they're producing to help guide the work, and a little bit more discussion and to address any specific questions that groups might have. We also are going to be receiving direct instructions for how the advisory bodies are intended to communicate with council. And so that perhaps might be why we're not hearing back directly from council, but there will be guidance provided to advisory bodies of how individually you can communicate with council members. And that will be coming early in summer of this year. And we'll be having staff from Civic Life come and talk about that process with us. The city code for this advisory body is not changing, but I know that the bylaws need to be updated. And so we'll be checking in with Ocean of the Civic Life Advisory Body Project on exactly how that will happen. I am guessing it will be, because none of the city charter code for this advisory body has changed, I am guessing it will be bylaws that are adopted by you all and then approved by council. Something new that is coming from the advisory enhancement is that they'll be conducting an ongoing audit, annual audits of advisory bodies. 25% of all advisory bodies each year will be audited. In that audit, they will be assessing the work plan and annual reports for that advisory body to ensure that the work is aligned with the bylaws and that there's an efficiency and a purpose. And so I know that this advisory body hasn't produced an annual report in some years, and so that might be something that is going to be implemented soon, but we still have to concern whether that would be expected at the end of the year 2027 or at the
Jenna,
end of
hang
the
on.
year.
I'm going to interrupt you because Corbin definitely has done that, and I want to props to Corbin.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work, so I just want to let Corbin say something on that.
Yeah.
I believe our last annual report was in February of 2025, around that time. January or February. I don't know if we've had an annual report since then, but I don't remember even getting a confirmation whether or not council received it.
I think in this process, it would be, we would formally submit a report to council and expect a response.
Sorry, Jenna,
Okay.
just please continue.
No, that's really helpful context, and I will bring that up to Ocean as he responds to me providing information on when would that annual report be expected to be produced from advisory bodies. And right now we know that advisory body staff with Civic Life will be producing templates for tracking demographics, exit interviews, training for city requirements, but we don't know if those templates will be templates for work plans our annual report. And so that's something that we need to confirm with them. But according to their timeline, and they seem to be on track with their project work, they will be coming in to address all these questions early summer. So we'll want to make sure to hold some time in our agendas and on their calendar for as soon as possible.
Do you know, Jenna, what the expectation is in terms of a timeline on compliance once we meet with them?
That will have to be determined by them, and that is why I wanted to ask, are you expecting an annual report at the end of this calendar year, 2026, December? Or would it be in 2027, because that's when they'll be starting their auditing process?
I think it's an annual report, so one will be, I would assume, due, and that's on me, within the next few months, and then there'll be another one. I feel like the life cycle, we can talk about it in the Board Affairs Working Group, but the life cycle is a little funky if it comes out in February, just because chair takes over. It's, on the sort of July or, to June kind of date versus, anyway, that's.
Can I jump in really quickly about
Yeah.
the February date? I think it was pushed from, usually I believe it's like August or September each year, and it was pushed because of the reconfiguration of the government coming in January. So we had the annual report ready for the new council members in February of 2025, which was an anomaly. Usually I think it's in September, August, September each year.
Mm-hmm.
And would you be able to, I'm sure it would be great for also newer board members to see, would you be able to send around the entire, just reply to Michelle's with the last annual report so folks can look and see what's been done in the past? Thank you. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Jenna and Amanda. Jenna, I think I'd asked a couple months ago, I saw something in the interim report about bodies like the Parks Board needing to first check in with the DCA before talking to council. Sounds like that process is still not clear. Is that right?
It's yet to be determining that, and that
Yeah.
will be provided in a formal, official manner to you all.
Sally and then Corbin.
I think having the report will be helpful, especially as a new person, to better understand what is in the report and why we're doing that. When I hear that it is on us and that we have to then submit to you and we will be audited for that, that sort of implies to me as if our report, we're kind of like, getting graded on it in a sense. And so I think over the past year that I've been on this board, I feel like there has been a lack of, this is what we need from you, and here's how we're supporting you, and here's how we can. And so I think the idea of developing a work plan is beneficial, but I do feel like we are all here and volunteering our time to support the department and just to support council and whatnot. And so having more of a clear charge around what our goal and our objectives are as we continue to meet and move forward, especially under this new structure, whatever you want to call it, would be really helpful. But just better having a better understanding of that report and why that would be on us to sort of prove, here's what we've done and here's what we're doing, and why that comes from. Really, the onus is on us, it sounds like, versus maybe a collective report or even on the department, I think is where kind of my mind is at right now. And partly is because I'm new and I don't quite have the backstory there. I'm struggling with that sort of dichotomy.
Corbin?
So I have just regarding the annual report really quickly. I think it's usually just done by the chair and hasn't usually been shared to the board in the past. I think the last two we have. So I'm glad that we're moving towards more people knowing what's in there and observing that. But my question is to Jenna regarding just a clarification. I believe you said how individuals communicate to council. Are you talking about individual board members, or is this more of how the board communicates with council? Because I believe our spokesperson is our chair or vice chair or an appointed person specifically to deliver the board's message.
Absolutely. And that was a misspeak on my part. I don't mean individual members. I mean you all as a collective advisory body, and how that will be set up for communication to council.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other questions for Jenna or Amanda?
The other question about the report, why is the onus on us?
So I can give you
Yeah.
my opinion on that. Corbin, I'd be interested in yours as well. So we are not a part of we're the Parks Board, but we're independent and our responsibility is to kind of hold parks, advise them and also hold them accountable for city council.
Right.
So we're not part of either. We're a separate body. So for us to be able to share, here's what we've done, here's what we're doing in an annual report, just like a lot of organizations or groups would, that onus is on us because it's not the agency's responsibility to determine our
I guess that makes sense.
course of action.
Since I haven't seen it, I don't think we've had a work plan. I think that's where my gray area is.
Work
What are
plan
we?
is new.
Okay,
Work
that's what I
plan would be
thought.
a
It's
new
like,
requirement.
what are we really working towards to say that we have succeeded on? You know, an annual work plan really ties to like, here's what we have achieved and here's how we've tied it up.
Yeah.
And so I think without the work plan, it's like, okay, that's great, makes sense, but the work plan will ground it in a way that hopefully can help us move forward.
This year's been a bit interesting. In previous years, there have usually been, I would say, between 1 and 3 things that come up that we kind of rally around, write a letter, advocate on. I assume it'll be the budget this year, but in past, the Harborton Reliability Project or something, you know, around trees and urban forestry. So there's been things this year. Nothing has
Yeah.
percolated to that level that the board has said we want to take action and but normally there are. But I will say in terms of a work plan, an annual work plan, that'll be an interesting charge for us because we're always looking at the next 2 to 3 months on what's coming up and what.
Right.
So that I think is, I'm curious what they say. I think that is a bit more challenging because it's not as broad as that.
Yeah, and maybe my question is then more rooted in how is that developed? And is it something that is co-developed? And if we need to be ahead of we need to be in the know, and so setting it for a year seems tricky. And then reporting on that, you know, it feels like it's kind of, we're like dragging the plane while flying, or like building the plane while flying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it is.
Yeah, okay.
Adrian.
Yeah, I just want to make a follow up on what I think Sally is also implying, and that is it's really the best interest of the city to have it be a strong, you know, clear two-way communication channel with goals coming in both directions. And so, you know, as Jenna and Amanda go and work on this and get feedback, and I'm not sure who else needs to be involved, but it's great that that's going to be clarified, at least, you know, communication channels. But the expectation too that not only would an advisory committee have a work plan, but that city council actually highlight specific goals for the year. Yeah, and I think although we've sent letters and, you know, testified individually or on behalf, it's always been a struggle to figure out how do you get the right attention at the right time. So it really shouldn't be a struggle, you know, if your job is to be advisory to city council. So something is missing, something's wrong.
Or did that, well, that two-way conversation was what I was getting at.
Corbin, and then I'm actually gonna, Corbin, and then I think this is very relevant to our conversation that's going to be taking place at 6. Where we're gonna break out in discussion groups on kind of the future of the board and how we wanna move forward, what are our best tactics, all of that. And then
I think Sarah has a message to.
yes, Sarah offered to send, and yes, please, Sarah, do the Levy Oversight Committee has an annual
Yeah,
report,
I can
which
send it
Sarah
out.
offered to send out. That'd be great.
It is more, I think, a little bit more robust than the ones that the annual board sent out, slightly different format. And we're hoping with this guidance, with the need for work plan, you know, that we'll get some sort of standardization. So it'll be easier to follow instead of just making something up out of the blue. Like you were all said. And I've made that clear during when I meet monthly with our other advisory body liaisons.
Corbin, did you still wanna?
Oh, I was gonna say, basically the annual report was a year in review of what the board has done, and then I was gonna ask you whether we're gonna get deeper into this conversation later in the evening because it seems pertinent and you already brought that up. So that is it for me. Thank you.
All right, then we are gonna go into the working group committee reports. And just as a reminder, we're doing it a bit differently. We're asking the leads to just share really a small snippet. What was the discussion topic of the last meeting? And then a preview what you're going to be discussing at the next meeting in case you don't reach quorum and someone wants to reach out to you and possibly attend your meeting so we can all learn better. So, all right, I am up first. Board Affairs Working Group. Our last meeting was really just a major pivot. We had been planning on this meeting being about the financial sustainability of parks into the future and our financial sustainability working group presenting on that. It wasn't ready. So most of the conversation was just around us pivoting to this conversation that you're going to have today. So, and figuring out what the best course of action is. And then our next meeting will be Board Affairs. We'll see what comes up from the working groups, if anything needs to be addressed, but it is also just setting agendas for things. And I will pass it to Suen for land use and infrastructure.
Yes, land use and infrastructure work group started with actually Tommy alerted us good information that he attended gathered from the PBOT session where they had a session about how to generate more funding and try and see how the PBOT is looking at resources and what Tommy came back with a little bit more is focusing on adding fees. So there's that PBOT perspective. And then we're talking to Sarah, and then we really like to further expand the discussion about how to pursue maybe lobby for the Parks District set up to be able look at sustainable funding resources. And we also mentioned that it may be better for us to have a better kind of collaboration and camaraderie with friends groups and community partners and just to collect a little bit more of that collective voices from the community groups as we speak forward with to the council or mayor, even to parks leadership. And then we also talk about parks probably need to have a clearer soundbite so that community who's paying taxes and fees and they understand every time I spend $1, that part is going into maintenance and that part is for capital projects. And so kind of outward relationship. And for our next meeting, we actually are going to be inviting Portland Parks Alliance to join us at the work session to hear from their perspective how some of the good ideas we can collectively push forward. The meeting will take place on April 28th.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Adrienne, financial sustainability.
No. So spent probably again the most of the time on sustainable funding plan and working with Sarah to kind of talk about what would the team structure be and the level of service, the specific funding elements for that. Talked a bit about some of the conversations that are now happening with new leaders, Director Schmansky, and as well as what the conversations she's having sort of determine the right time frame for pieces that might go forward. And that will be relevant to what we would do when as board members or subcommittee members in terms of trying to get support. And so, in terms of a special parks district, likely we couldn't even consider doing that till the next long session. Talked a bit about kind of the history of that and what what it might take to get support for that. And then the issue of, when a timing of support for potentially a bond, particular maintenance kind of bond might be. So, the agreement is really to work closely with park staff and who's in the know to get the right time frame. So
Is Sabrina here? I don't think I've seen her. Does anyone else from community engagement wanna give a little update? No pressure, as you were not asked to prior. Okay, Allison, fees for recreation, arts, culture, and nature.
Sure thing. So our working group is still in this identity discovery phase. And at the last meeting, we continued to dig into the question of how does culture come into focus for our working group? How do we define culture? What are our cultural goals? A definition that arose that was suggested by Corbin that I think resonated with all of us, that culture is agreed upon practices and behaviors. So that led us to the question of what happens when you're outside of those agreed upon practices and behaviors or that culture. So thinking about how that ties to accessibility and the work that Parks and Rec has done with accessibility so far. Maximo was at our last meeting and mentioned that him and his team are working on a report around accessibility and the work that has been done, what's been successful, where are opportunities for growth. So we're hoping at our next meeting to dig into that more, and Maximo, I'll connect with you offline more about that. Hopefully someone from your team or you can join us again. So that meeting, our next meeting will be the 20th of March. It's Friday, 9 to 10 a.m. Always welcome other folks to attend.
Thank you.
I can speak on community engagement.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about how we engage with the public, thinking about how we had public comment last time and sort of how do we follow up on that, and how do we make sure that when people come and engage with us, there's some sort of action or something where we understand what we need to do, how do we get out of that. So we talked about changing up the language on the website that currently says like public can attend, or to change it to something like the public is invited to, and then create some sort of template or language that asks, when you do sign up and you are coming, to bring an ask, and if there's no ask, that's okay, but to identify that so that we know how to interact with you and to better understand what you're trying to get at and how we can help you. So I think there's definitely going to be a little bit of work on that language around how do we post it and do people feel more invited to come and engage with us, whereas right now it feels a little just a little, I don't know the right word there is, but
The language could be warmer.
yeah, it could be warmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know what your next topic will be?
No,
That's okay.
no, I didn't have that in my notes, but
Okay.
that's I'm done.
Great. All right.
Had her hand up.
Sorry, yes.
So I believe Jen and I are going to be getting together because Sabrina is not going to be able to make the meeting, and we are trying to pin a letter that will be going out to the community. But I think a lot of the conversation that's supposed to be happening later in the evening will help facilitate that action in our next meeting. But that is the plan.
Can you clarify a letter to the community? Are we gonna be talking about what that is next, or is that?
Yeah,
would
what
that
it should be, what it is, because at this point, as you laid out, is inviting community into what, and if we're going to write them,
Yeah,
to what end? What is the efficacy or advocacy they might be looking for, and what can we provide as the board?
okay, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure if you were talking about like writing a specific letter or language.
All right. We are going to move on to the Portland Park Foundation. What's up?
Hi, we are we're in event planning mode, I feel like very much so. So I have several fun dates for you to put down and would love for your participation, but the biggest one right now being April 12th. We are planning the celebration of the Thompson Elk Fountain return. It will be returning the week of April 6th. So it'll already be there on the 12th. So would love for all of you to come. It is a big civic event. We are partnering with PPNR, PBOT, Arts and Culture, RAC, Water Bureau. We're all kind of rolling up our sleeves and getting it done. So that's really exciting. Will hopefully be a big moment for Portland.
Give it time.
What?
Give it time for that.
Yeah, so it's if you want to be part of the media event, the media event is 11 to 12:30, and then the public event kicks off at 1. So it's 1 to 4. Programming starts officially at 1:30. So there's that. April 19th, the following Sunday, we are doing the third part in our Green Dream series in partnership with the Portland Monuments Project. We are doing it in partnership with the Native Arts and Culture Foundation, and we're doing a field day at Tryon Creek, so State Park. We'll be doing some programming in their new education pavilion and doing a little bit of a forest walk. And it's really about Native history, art, and placekeeping, sort of as it relates to monument making. So that is April 19th. That'll be 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we are the Eventbrite pulled up right now. It is not quite public yet. Jason Brown, who's our programs and partnerships manager, is finalizing details on that. But really excited to do a field trip out to Tryon and to partner with Native Arts and Culture Foundation and to be able to hear from some local Native artists. I think there's also going to be some art making of your own too, if you join. And then on May 8th, we are working very closely with Jenna. Hi, Jenna, and her community engagement team on putting together event at Raymond Park, which opened earlier this year, the new playground and upgraded irrigation. And we'll be hosting an event that really celebrates the whole Everybody Plays Playground campaign and putting together a big fun play day. That will be, I believe, I want to say 2:30, Jenna, or 3:30 to 5:30, Friday, May 8th. And we'll be having a fun program for that. So that playground is done. We'll be breaking ground on our next playground at Portland Heights Park later that month. So mid-May to late May, everything goes well with securing a contractor. And then the following week, May 14th, we'll be hosting our Friends and Allies Spring Summit, which I think I mentioned. There's no invite open yet, but that will be 5 to 7:30 at the Laurelhurst Club. And also love for all of you to join. It's a great way to continue to engage with the network. We'll be celebrating all the nominees for our Volunteer and Emerging Leadership Awards. So some really great people filling the room and celebrating that day. Those are kind of our back-to-back-to-back events. And I'll just continue to plug that we do have our small grants open right now, our North Portland Community Fund grants, and our Emerging Leadership Award. So please share those with your network. And those are kind of our big updates on that front. Swen?
I want to shout out to your effort in leading the conversation of 4 sessions already on the levy with different topics and themes. I sat through all of them. I learned so much, and I really appreciate you. Just 2-hour session each, and then there's one more coming up. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Swen. And I do, so following up, so Sally, you were part of the, I know the wildfire reduction, which was super helpful. We've been having great participation, and those meetings are really only as good as like people who show up and are the experts and get feedback. So I will, Sarah is on here. Sarah gave me some great, just summary follow-up to the wildfire one. So I'll reach out to everybody on that. And then we'll be working with Sarah to think about kind of what the next steps are on the partnership piece, because a lot of those are outside what the current KPI dashboard is, but I think it's a great starting point for us also just starting to think about some goals around our external partnerships. And then the Levy Oversight Committee was really great. So thank you, Parks Board, for participating in all of those conversations. It's been really good conversation. And thank you, Sarah.
Been busy.
Huh?
You've been busy.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
Right, any other questions for Jessica?
Can you send links to the events or like a follow-up on that?
Yes, should I just send them to you or just send it to everybody? You fine if I just
think you
send
can
to everyone?
Send to everyone.
Yeah, yeah, I will send links there. I don't think there'll be a link for the elk, but I will send you our announcement. We're finishing that tomorrow with the partners. And then I'll send you links to all the other
Yeah,
ones
just
for
any
sure.
sort of like reminder.
As they come, yes.
That makes
Yeah.
it on the calendar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Thank you. And now we are up for our board strategy discussion, and Michelle is actually going to start us off with some grounding slides, and then we are going to break up into smaller groups so that we can discuss, and then we'll come back together and kind of report out and have a larger discussion.
You share.
Great time to grab snacks while she's getting the
Yeah,
presentation up and open all your noise. If you've been waiting for the moment.
Open all the cans, open all the bags.
So I can distribute everything.
And this is really cool.
These are my favorite. These are like my little, yeah, I feel like I'm healthy, but even.
You're hungry.
Okay, just very basic slides just to give us an understanding of, make sure everyone is the same level of knowledge about how the city is moving. We are in a new form of government, have been since 2024. Parks has moved around, there's been a lot of change. We now have 4 districts, which has brought us parameters that we haven't considered before, which is both helpful and also creates a lot of change. We came from a city council that had 4 commissioners and 1 mayor, where they were the ones that helped manage operations. We had a specifically designated parks commissioner that the director reported to and helped be an advocate for the bureau at city council. That has since changed. We are now the city council with 12 city councilors and the mayor, who then manages the city with the city administrator. And we also just recently got a new city administrator. So again, lots of change. Change is the big theme here. Something that has been recently done is last year, city council had all of the, on the left column, all of these committees that we mostly met in climate resilience and land use, but it created a lot of committees, lots of meetings, and sometimes we would be called to other groups. That has since been reduced just recently to now just 5 committees that city council is working on. I've highlighted a few things that are kind of relevant to what parks can be coming in for. Public Works, of course, a Public Works committee. We will probably be there the most, but there are other things like city life, community and public safety. If we were to do Parks Board appointments, that would go to Finance and Governance Committee on the whole on the bottom. So this might create us attending different council committee meetings that's still kind of being worked out, since this is quite new. This table I put together like last week, and I had just heard it from council. So just to give you an idea of what we didn't have any of these committees before this new government transition, and now we have these committees that then we can go to, that after these committees presumably would go to full council if they would like to bring issues to full council.
Can I ask a question? You might not know the answer, but
Yeah.
why is climate change prevention and mitigation under city life versus something like public works?
I don't know. I don't have the answer. I think there's a lot, I think, in public work, it says bureaus addressing public infrastructure. I think that plus climate change prevention and mitigation could be linked. But I think there might be some climate change prevention and mitigation work that is outside of like what we do as parks. But I'm not entirely sure. This was kind of the description that was given to us. And I even reduced it, I even summarized it.
That was okay. I wasn't sure if you'd know or not. It
No,
seems
I
kind of
don't.
odd.
Again,
That's
very
big
new,
hold up.
they may still be figuring it out as we
Okay,
work on
yeah.
this for the year.
Well, it
Because
reflects negotiation among 12 people.
Yeah.
With 12 perspectives.
Right.
And some interest and some matchup between who's likely to be on which of these we want to work on. So there's a lot, you know, and yes.
we're still learning what they're learning. Little bit, there's a lot going on, but I just wanted to point out that this is the current org structure of the city. We have the mayor, the city administrator. Our bureaus are into these 4 main service areas, and we are within public works. We report to a deputy city administrator. And then this part is the city operations team has a city core centralized work service groups such as human resources, technology, procurement, communications, engagement, equity, security. This is our general org chart from the mayor down to our bureau. City Administrator Raymond Lee. We have DC Donna Paul, interim director Szymanski, and kind of what the bureau's teams are seen as right now. And then just to reiterate kind of the establishment of the board in 2001. This was based on Parks 2020 vision. Of course, that has since passed. And so we are hoping to update the bylaws with the guidance of the Advisory Bodies Enhancement Project. But this is how the board was formed. And I know a lot of folks will reference this bit a lot when we talk about kind of what is the board's purpose, and we'll go into that discussion a little bit later. And then what we do as working groups, in case you wanted to know more about other groups, we've been trying to do this preview of agendas so that if you hear something from another group that you haven't participated in, but it sounds interesting, you can start attending the meetings if you want, if we have space for it, and if that's possible. We want to facilitate that to create more synergy between the groups so other groups know what one group knows what the other group's doing. Hoping that will lead to some more collaboration and better discussion. That's it. I also wanted to share before I share the discussion questions, this is some new information that we've received. And I'm hoping this maybe could be a driver for today's discussion. There will be budget listening sessions hosted by the mayor and city council. So what happened last year is that the city administrator released the proposed budget in February. And then there was a chance for community members to give feedback in these budget listening sessions, 1 session per district. And I believe we had at least 3 districts accounted for, 2, 3, and 4, where someone from the board had given public testimony. I learned out today, there's going to be 2 rounds, so to speak, but the first round is going to be before the mayor's proposed budget. Second round will be after the mayor's proposed budget. The first round is not similar to last year's budget listening session where we just give a bunch of public testimony. Their intention is to do almost like an open house informational format. TBD on dates and locations. I'm actually helping see if we could provide parks facilities as a location for these open houses, but that is their intention right now, is to have 2 chances for touch points. But the first one before the proposed budget is released, which will be released in May, is going to be an open house format. I don't know exactly more details than that. I just heard about that format today. But I think it would be a good idea to, using this discussion to, one, maybe think of some either talking points or just general themes that folks may want to advocate for the budget, even though we haven't heard what the proposed budget is, maybe getting some ideas of what to talk about. I believe the second round of the budget listening sessions will be similar to last year's, where community members will be able to give public testimony. The date ballpark for the first round open house format is between March 30th and like mid to late April. Again, they haven't solidified a date yet, but once we find out what the dates are, I will let you know as soon as we find out so we can all plan. I know that's not a huge turnaround time. That's what we have right now as far as information.
Awesome.
Fascinating. I have a question, maybe a couple. One, can you clarify what you mean by an open house format?
Yeah, that's my
Do
question.
they talk about, so they have like
almost like I think like a table, like tables.
Like a convention?
Probably
setting?
less presentation centered and more information, like go find your own.
Yeah, it's not like last year, like previous budget listening session where folks are in an audience, council's like on this front of the stage, and then people go up one by one to give their comment. This is supposedly, I don't exactly know what the format is. They just said open house format. And they wanted to rent like big auditoriums, like the biggest space possible. And so with that, I'm assuming that there will be like stations of information. If you've been to Parks open house, there's, giant poster boards of like maybe design ideas and a chance to give feedback on such ideas. But that's as much as I know. And this whole time I thought it was actually going to be 2 rounds of people listening to public comment, but it sounds like that's not what they're doing.
I'm just as some background for the newer folks, and I'm curious, because it is a new form of government, right? We went drastically different, whole new cast of characters, and last year was a major, I believe, learning curve for the new mayor and city councilors, where there was a big public reaction from to what our city government was proposing to cut from parks. People came out for sports, people came out for Moldova Arts Center, councilors who put forward unpopular amendments got talking to by the public, right? All of these things happen. So I'm very curious how that information and that memory of lots of sad looking kids, you're taking away the only sport that I can do because we can't afford to do the private pay to play ones, like is a whole deal. So I'm very curious how that's gonna, they're not babies anymore, they're toddlers, our city council, right? Like, that's great. I meant like,
well,
we know they're not calling them babies. I'm saying that like it's our city government is still very, very young. Better way to say it. So it'll be interesting. And I think that's something to keep in mind as we're having this conversation, right? There's been a change in government. They've got a year under their belt. So do we now. So I think we can be more strategic. I'm curious. I'm glad that we got some information today on the advocacy question that we had talked about last time, because I think that's really important for us to move forward. I'm very curious on, it would be actually, in my opinion, amazing for city council to have a more direct, hey, this is how we want to hear from you versus us at times what it felt like screaming into the void. So I think that there's some good momentum, and city council definitely have more information than they did at budget time last year. That's not to say we're not going to probably have to fiercely advocate, because I assume we will, especially given the city's financial situation, but I think it's going to be less of a learning curve than last year, is my hope. With that, any questions before actually, I'll just say one thing about breakout groups. Michelle, I'm assuming we're doing 1 online and then 2 in person?
So what we'll do is there's a small group that's online right now. Jenna is going to help lead that group. And then I'm going to take the rest of you all in person. We're going to go into different rooms up the sides here to break up. I think groups of 3 or 4 be good. Amanda, did you have your hand up to talk about?
Yeah, are staff participating? I'm trying to understand staff role.
Staff
in
does
this
not need
section.
to participate. I don't
Here's,
think.
A thought on staff, because staff have really valuable feedback and see us from both sides. So if staff would like to have their own discussion group to be able to provide input on how you think we can do better, I'm all for that. I would, or if you simply have separate feedback that you want to pass on, I think that would be really
Let's
nice.
maybe do separate feedback just because I can't do
Okay.
breakout groups with this format.
But for each group, if we could have one person just decide when you get there to be a note taker. And then one person will take notes, you'll all discuss, and then I'm hoping we all come back together and share some of what was discussed with each other, and it may lead to more discussion, may not, we'll see. Corbin.
Question on recording. Is the group
I'm
that is
going-
online gonna stay recorded, or are we doing
I'm
something
going to
different?
pause the recording and then start it up when we all convene again.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Are we having a discussion at 6:45, sort of a share out, or?
Let's
Yeah,
do
we're gonna break into discussion groups now, and then, yeah, I think
6:07. I think we should go reconvene at 6:40.
6:40.
Yeah, that way we have enough time to share out.
And then if people, the note takers could also then email their notes to me at the end so I can compile them all, that would be fabulous.
And if you need the draft questions or the discussion questions, sorry, they were in your board packet. We need to pull that up. I can also.
Matt.
Are we gonna spend any time as a group today, sort of with some reviews, overarching themes, like to report out, or?
Yeah, at 6:40, we'll come back and do report, like, what are the things that each group talked about, and then are there any?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't have it.
Yes.
We don't have very many advisory bodies meetings, so there's a few rooms to the left here that are available. I'm gonna pause.
Is this advisory body meeting night?
Sometimes it is. Okay, now we're ready to report out.
So the first question about what aspects of our new government structure make it harder or potentially easier for the Parks Board to engage. Some of these go both ways. So more people to talk to, harder for communication, diffuse decision-making responsibility. That can make things harder and easier. And that you can have more folks to potentially widen the pool of engagement. What's harder is there's no clear point person like we had in the past. Council does seem to be at a remove. Maybe that's a temporal thing, but
Council seems what?
seems at more of a remove. Now that there isn't that specific liaison. And we don't really have clarity on CC engagement. Easier seems that, in a general sense, more representative government is more democratic. There are less people sort of drawing down the resources of one contact person, so we're talking to more people potentially. And it seems like a more intuitive way to kind of engage, in that we have board members that are living in districts, so let's talk to those district councilors. And then the comment was made about these new committees. We just talked about very broad-based in content, so it may be easier to plug into those committees. Moving on to the next question. Let's see. What's working in terms of adaptation? We appreciate having Michelle on a lot of these advisory bodies, and it's continuity of feedback and also sort of historical context. We appreciate how flexible you all are being in a really challenging environment. And we shared some specific feedback about like how we want to engage with parks, and we appreciate that. What's not working, council is not engaging with the board, particularly, doesn't seem that way. We do think there's more opportunities for agenda items to be kind of a two-way conversation. We appreciate when we can hear about what you're looking for in terms of feedback, and how those questions teed up well in advance to the board, so we can support you. And then just lastly, we've been talking a lot about engagement for a while, but not doing it. So let's do it. The third and the fourth questions kind of blend together. Now that councilors represent districts rather than the entire city, how does that change the way we approach council? I mean, spoiler, I think we're all on the same page. You can reach out to your district council person for regular meetings. And I think in terms of specific engagement strategies, we all kind of felt like we all want to lean into engaging with our district counselors on a regular basis, whether that's quarterly or annual meetings, perhaps monthly emails. For folks, most counselors are in this case of we just need to get a first touch meeting. Some cases there's follow-up. What would be helpful is for guidance from board leadership or park staff on what does that initial email look like to the counselors, talking points. And really the idea here is we're just establishing awareness of the board so that when the board is thinking about parks things, they think of us as a resource, because that's not happening now. With more familiarity, they're more likely to do that. I think somebody had a suggestion when we if we do go this route of regular check-ins with counselors, maybe it's both whoever's from that council district, but also maybe the chair and the vice chair. And then lastly, just as we have park openings, thinking about that as an opportunity to connect with counselors at those events, making plugs for parks.
Anything else from anyone to add from your group? I will say, as we go forward, if your idea has been set already, maybe we don't, so like just contributing new ideas. That works.
Jacob has.
Yeah. Jacob.
Sorry, I had a mouthful of goldfish. This was touched on, but making sure that before we do first touch meetings that we have just boilerplate for introductions so that we can use consistent messaging on what is the Parks Board as we're explaining it to people who aren't familiar with us. And then we have city councilors who were on the Parks Board, so they would be really low hanging fruit, I think, for those first contact meetings and for getting councilors or councilor staff, legislative staff to attend one of our meetings and see what making the sausage up close looks like.
All right. Online group or other in-person group? I know I'm a part of it, but I'm also doing this, so I won't be there.
I can read our notes, but you have our notes.
Oh, I do have the notes.
Yeah, I was like, Allie, you took notes.
Okay. All right, we're gonna start with online and then you're gonna come to me.
Online group, you want to share your notes?
Who's sharing?
I took notes for the online group, and I can share, but I also wanted to leave space for the board members who are in that group if they wanted to share from memory of the discussion.
Jenna, please, if you can share your notes, I'll add if I felt like anything was missing.
Yeah, a lot of similarities to what has already been shared. There was a really strong sentiment that we acknowledge that with the change of government, there'll be some clashing as things become more seasoned and people become more comfortable, but having that exchange of difference is good to see. And a board member shared that they feel empowered with this new form of government as not just a Portlander, but as an East Portlander. I thought that was a really powerful sentiment with this new government, despite the fluctuations of this past year. Definitely more opportunities to engage. We talked a little bit about what committee in the council would be the best fit for board members to engage. And if there is a gap in representation from districts, if the board can come and help support that gap and have a longer period or more time to speak to issues or to advocate rather than the 2-minute testimonial that's provided. And let me pull back up some notes here. Sorry, 1 second. We also discussed if the board could be a place to connect with more disenfranchised folks who don't feel as comfortable going to a council meeting to testify on their own, and if they could be that thread of connection between community and council, if individuals would feel more comfortable coming to this board and talking about park issues or what they wanted to see in the park. And then if the board can go share that with council on behalf of community. We also talked about liking the idea of identifying a strong community need and elevating that need and making that a part of full board advocacy, whether at council working groups, committees, with other communities, or with leadership within the Bureau. We had a staff member share perspective both as staff and a previous board member, and to touch more a little bit on how can information from on the ground staff get to the board outside of our annual reports, our more formal channels for presentation and reporting back to the board. Just recognizing that the volume of information that we have from on the ground staff is very, very large, and there's an opportunity to share that with the board, and thinking about how when we're sharing information from community at a very high level, what does it feel like as a community member seeing that? And does community members see themselves in that data set that is eventually shared at the board here in regular channels and presentation? And talking a little bit about different ways to get community members to share their perspective and see themselves in the feedback that eventually makes its way up to the board. A similar sentiment was shared, but I just wanted to reiterate that there is an emphasis on Bureau leadership, Bureau staff, counselors being the entity and the leaders in creating the format in which council advises, and that the route to advise is not on this board to produce, but that for this board to step fully into their advisory role, there needs to be a channel and a pipeline and a structure and a pathway to do that. And that will make both advisory role to council and then also the channel to community to council through the board much more seamless. And so that is a request of board to council and to leadership to provide that pathway.
Yeah. Anything to add from anyone else in the online group? That was it.
I would add something really quickly regarding the type of presentations that we have. The question is how high level and what needs to be more on the ground level, and how community members can engage the information that we're being exposed to and privy to. We do use a lot of shop talk and acronyms, and we've gotten really good about spelling everything out. It's just a question of what will make the community engage more. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, also, Dr. Corbin mentioned that there could be a more strategic use of the two ex officio roles. And if there is a community group, a coalition of members, or a community group that's like strongly engaged in their park system, if inviting them to sit on one of those ex officio role spots would be a helpful through line towards community engagement, deep community engagement and advocacy, and this board, if there could be use for that.
I will note that we actually have up to 4 spots for ex officio members.
Well, why that's
according to our
why-
bylaws.
Really?
Yes. So if
There you go.
Interesting.
Thank
Okay.
you, Jenna.
All right, from our group, and please fill in if I'm not saying, because I'm gonna not repeat. I think a lot of things have been said, so I'm gonna skip a bunch of stuff. But we talk a lot about city council, but also talking about the BCA city administrator and mayor, and how are we engaging them as they are really critical voices in the process. We talked about a lot of things, but one of the things that we really came into was wanting to have a more targeted agenda. So what are the things that we're trying to achieve, and then building out the strategy for how we are actually going to do them, versus feeling like there's so many things all at once, but what are every year, what are the targeted things that we are really going for? And then what are our points to get there? So, and that's in addition to our regular work, right? We do most of what we do is advising parks. They come to us with a presentation, and that's an important part of our job. But what are the campaigns each year that we can work on that will make us headway with city council? Because I think we're not just advocates, we're also educators for our city council on parks, and another voice to help them better understand. So being less reactive to urgent situations, setting an agenda, also wanting to know more about staff's 3 to 6 month plan, what's coming up for them so that we're not, so that we're also less reactive to the parks agendas as well. We talked about the districts, we talked about all the things that people have said. But we also talked about community feedback, and some of this has come up, but being more organized about making sure we have representation at community events where we can get that face time with council members. And I think it was Sally, like a spreadsheet where we have what are the upcoming events and what board members are signed up to go.
What a spreadsheet.
Very helpful. And we can start that soon. There's a bunch of Parks Foundation events coming up and other stuff coming up with parks. So how are we doing that? And it's also nice for other parks members to know, board members to know, so you can connect with your fellow parks member, and it strengthens our ties to each other as well, which is always a really important thing. And talked about potentially using the Parks Foundation and others like them to, how much we talked about capacity. We talked about how we are largely a board who are working full time. And so it is not always easy for folks to get to daytime meetings and all of that. So how are we also utilizing things that are already there, like the Parks Foundation, where they're making connections with partners and hearing direct feedback from partners, wanting to get more report backs and information if we're talking about a topic and they've done community listening. I would love part of every presentation, what was the result of that? What were the major themes that came out of that community listening? So that, we can only host so many people to be able to provide comment, but Parks is often talking to hundreds of people, or the Parks Foundation is working with partners all the time. So how are we able to bring that in so that we're not just hearing for Parks voices, but we're also hearing the public's voices too, through the mechanisms that are already in place. So those are, I think, some of the things that hadn't been mentioned. Did I miss anything from our team that should be said?
I think there was a question maybe or a thought around if you're working with staff on a particular subject, like let's say the sustainability one, oftentimes the cadence of the every month means that the work getting done, then there's more of a reporting out rather than like working with advising. And so being open to maybe a different meeting schedule if something arises where you want to do like a working group on something collectively.
Government moves slow, but also moves fast. And so it feels like meeting once a month, we're always playing catch up. Whereas if we can have more of a strategy, I think that's what we're tying it to, then we can create the strategy behind and maybe be more flexible in our meetings so that we feel more productive and ahead of ourselves rather than always chasing.
I think if that's something we could especially I think that's hard to do on a month-to-month basis because you have so many players. But when we look at something towards budget season is coming, what are the key dates? Do we want to adjust anything around something really big like that? Could be a conversation. Otherwise, doodle polls for 30 people are really hard. But but I do think that there's opportunities for that to be strategic with or again, we have, and I know people don't love ad hoc groups, but I think they're really effective for who's got the time, energy, and knowledge right now to get into this thing that is more urgent, to be able to come to the board with, here is what we talked about, and here is our recommendation.
I just realized we didn't pause for public comment.
Is there any public comment?
There's no one in the lobby, but I just wanted to double check with Liberty since you are our witness here.
I got nothing.
Okay.
Comment.
Perfect.
Great job. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
All right, well then so time for report outs, but not discussion. But I think it was good to hear everyone's ideas. Please email me the ideas so we can kind of put them together. And then I think the next board affairs working group, it can be a discussion topic on how we want to move some of these things forward.
Yeah, I love the idea of event calendar spreadsheet or something and noting who's going. I think that's a great idea. Yes.
I love that that's like an easy, like that.
So.
Okay, thank you, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. Really appreciate all your time. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for on the nose.